Greetings, cosmic stabilizers. Welcome to today's live, where we're going to be discussing the 5 interruptions that have happened this week in relation to intuition and self love. Okay. And I'm so glad that you're here. I did start a little late tonight. I try not to start late, but I have literally been traveling all day, but I have been committed and determined to do what I say I'm going to do, which is be here for you. Okay. And if I can help it, I will always be here, even if I'm going to be a few minutes late. Okay. Unless things change, just because I'm dedicated to this value that I'm inputting for the output of consistency and success, and to see us with builds that represent divinity in a brilliant and intelligent and stable way. Okay. And so I'm really excited about that. We're not going to be here long at all because I have been traveling all day, but I do want to give you some value that you can hold on to, especially if you are a resident of Zion. You can pull together some of the things that I have been posting there. If we have been communicating one on one with your own personal builds, or if you just have seen me in the community, either way, let's put this together, okay? So this is not about becoming more productive robots, okay? And I think sometimes that is where a large interruption comes, especially with divine creators, is we get set on what we think we're supposed to do, and then we want to flow into it like a machine. And that's not necessarily the way to go, because if it were, we would just be replaced with machine, and then we would not be needed anymore. So today, what I want, as we're going through this live, what I really want you to think about is what makes you valuable as a human being, as God embodied in your state. Okay? What makes you valuable? What makes you different from AI? And not from the perspective that AI is more valuable than you. Okay? Let's think about it as teammates, as partnerships, right? When you're in a partnership, it's not about somebody being more important than the other, the husband being more valuable than the wife. When you're in a partnership or you're in a marriage, you are marrying that person because the combination becomes something useful. The combination becomes something you wouldn't be able to be or do alone, right? And so that's what I want you to think of when we're talking about interruptions and building. It's not how can I make myself more machine like? It's how can I bring my value as a human, as human intelligence, right? And partner it with AI intelligence to create something that the two of us combined could not have done alone. Okay. And AI comes from human intelligence. So one of the best ways to do that is to continue to create systems and philosophies and protocols and workflows that AI can use, right? And to become a team member that you cannot be replaced, which means we have to always be tapped into something beyond these physical systems. We have to be tapped into something that is beyond a machine, which is God and our divinity. Okay, that is the true magic. And so, I have a question for you. Okay, what happens when your vision expands faster than your structure? What happens when your vision expands faster than your structure? I'm going to put a little visual up here for you to process while I'm talking. So I'm going to pull it. And you can go ahead and type it in the chat if you have something that comes up for you. But a lot of people, when their vision expands faster than their structure, it ends up outrunning their energy and capacity to continue moving forward. Okay. And that's usually what happens. So when you're like, oh, I want to build this world, I want to build this ecosystem, I have this idea to create this new software, I have this idea to create a new robot or whatever it is that you're planning to create for our civilization, right? Do you have the physical tools and capacity to hold that vision? Do you? Do you, huh? Do you? Okay. And so that is something to think about. And this week I dealt with that firsthand. And that's the basis of the system that I'm going to dig into today. Not really dig into, but I'll kind of like graze over to give you an example of how when we have an interruption to our energetic flow, it's important to not pretend like it's not happening. Okay. And this happens in relationships often. Like you'll have a hiccup, there'll be something that bothers you that your partner said, or there'll be something that your friend or your sister or your child does. And because you're afraid to rock the boat, you don't actually say what's on your heart about it. And there's definitely a way to do it and a way to say it and a way to be honest. But so often people just don't, they ignore their right to be honest because they're not sure what the outcome is going to be. Okay. And that is something that happens when we're building systems and when we're building businesses and we're building tools and software is there will be a flow that's going. And then you get excited because you've got so much momentum, like a brand new relationship. But then something comes up that's not fitting, right? And how do you know that it's not fitting? Is it's an interruption to your system. And if you're connected with your chakras, you'll feel tightness, you'll feel static, you'll feel sometimes nauseous. You'll feel like this feeling like, oh, you'll get really, really tired or sleepy, or you'll feel a lack of motivation or ambition. Suddenly that's letting you know that the more momentum is no longer going in a direction that is compatible with your vision. Okay. Which also means you're no longer in a frequency of manifesting that vision. So if you're not in the frequency of manifesting that vision, that means you're going against the grain now. And if you don't say something or do something or address the interruption, then what happens is now you're building a new trajectory and a new path that's going in the complete opposite direction of what you want. So let's just review the 5 interruptions, which is on the screen right now. And we're going to continue to go over these 5 interruptions because you need to get to know the things that get in the way of you being productive, the things that get in the way of you actually doing what you said you're going to do and building what you said you're going to build, right? So, one of the number one interruptions is that you will have an interruption to an overload of signals, okay? Right? So, let me get back to my notes because I'll get all off on the ringer and then end up going over time. And I need to eat because I've been traveling all day. Okay. But yeah, so you have input overload is a big one that you will have as an interruption to your system. Okay. Um, and sometimes the signal overload. So you've got like overload is very similar to the signal overload. Let me get my handwritten notes because my digital notes are not what I need them to be right now. And this is why I like handwritten notes, because I can just get to them when I need to get to them. Okay, so number one of the interruptions is emotional static. Number two is environmental noise. Number three is input overload. Number four is unclear pathway, right? So you know where you need to go, you know where you're starting, but how to get there is not clear. And that's usually what happens with founders, right? You have this vision, but you don't know how to get there. That is an interruption to your signal. That's an interruption to your flow. And then the fifth interruption that happens often is a nervous system fatigue. Okay. So when you feel that static or you feel that hiccup in the relationship between you and what you're doing and building, you have to stop and evaluate the situation, evaluate the data. And it's important to start tracking your data. Maybe this week, what I'll do is put out some data tracking systems for you guys to have in Zion. So if you're not in Zion, join Zion. If you don't know about Zion, you're like, I want to know about Zion, just type Zion in the comments, and then I'll get you hooked up. Okay. But in Zion this week, I think what I'm going to really do is get a way for you to start tracking your own data, because this is you got to start learning how to recognize patterns. Very, very important to learn how to recognize patterns so you don't repeat unnecessary patterns. And this is what happens when we have these interruptions to our signals. Is it's trying to tell you you're headed on a path that's no longer in the direction that you want to go. Same thing with relationships. And sometimes those hiccups and interruptions show you how to get stronger, right? That's exactly what it should do when you're in the right relationship. When you're in the right relationship with you and you, when you're in the right relationship with you and your mission and your vision and your purpose, your values should tell you that when the interruption comes, when you handle it with your values, with your morals, it should tell you how to strengthen your system, to strengthen your beliefs around what it is that you're building. Okay. And so you'll get these input overloads, and then you need to figure out how to get yourself back aligned with the output. So whatever the interruption is, then you got to map and say, okay, what's the pattern here? And how do I clear the direction? How do I clear the path? How do I clear the static or clear the environmental noise? Huh? How do I clear the overload of inputs? So like even towards the end of this week, I had to say, I have been inputting more information than I have been outputting. So I stopped watching YouTube videos. I stopped scrolling. And I'm in school now to get my master's in artificial intelligence. I've been in school. I took a little pause because I felt out of alignment. My original master's was in data science, but I felt an interruption. So the interruption was me no longer feeling the drive. I wasn't feeling like doing the work. I couldn't feel the momentum energetically. I'm very psychically aligned, and so I can feel energy flowing. And so I couldn't feel the momentum. So I was like, something's off here. So I took a little break so I could get aligned. And what I realized is data science is good, but where the help is really needed is in AI. Not everybody, my long-term goal is to get my PhD in machine learning. And I'm not doing this because I say everybody needs to get their PhD, right? Everybody needs to get their master's. But I have a clear vision of what's needed, and I have a clear vision of what the gap is. So even when I'm studying my work, I can feel an interruption of why I can't understand certain calculus formulas, right? Why I don't understand certain properties to build neural networks, right? And it's because of how it's being presented. And I'm like, if I'm having this issue, then other people who are vibe coding might be having the same issue. So one of the reasons why I'm taking this path is so that I can translate it so we can become better vibe coders for those who are non-linear learners. Okay, so sometimes you have these interruptions so that you can map a clear path, not just for yourself, but for someone else, which is why it's so important to track your data. Okay, so you have to recognize what the static is, but don't ignore it. Take time to build a relationship with it. I was just telling a client earlier this week um, about some dark situations that he was having. And I was like, hey, start getting used to the dark. Get used to it because that's actually where your power is at. Your power is being in the dark because when you're in the dark, that's when you think the most clear. That's when you get the most ideas. That's when you become the most strong. So when you get these interruptions, build a relationship with not running from them, but saying, okay, what you got for me now? What new system is going to come out of this? It's like the same thing with relationships. When you have hiccups in relationships, say, okay, well, how is this going to make us stronger versus how is this separating us into different entities? Sometimes separation is necessary so you can think and then come back together, right? And then sometimes separation is necessary so you can know this is no longer a match. But you will not know what is what, who is who, and what goes where if you don't take time to decipher the difference and analyze the data. Analyze the data in your day to day life, analyze the data in your systems. When you're building your systems, you should be documenting your processes. You should be documenting what have I done this week, what did I not do. You should be looking at your analytics, not just on your social media, but be looking at the analytics of your life. Be looking at the analytics of your family. How has my child been growing this week? How has my relationship been growing with my partner this week? What did I do that was actually fruitful that was not proving fruitful last week, right? So we have to really get used to building a relationship with the interruptions and how we are going to move forward and move past them. Okay, this is so deep, and I hope that you are catching it. Okay, so I have a 6-step process that you can use to recover from the interruptions. And number one is separate the signal from the noise. Okay, so sometimes that's taking a pause and saying what is actually in alignment and what's not in alignment because they can be convoluted. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about separating the wheat from the tare. That's kind of like the wheat from the weeds, like the good stuff from what's not good. And when we have a signal that's going and we've been inputting, this is where the input overload comes in as an interruption, right? If we have, and input overload, it can cause emotional static because you no longer have a clear frequency, a clear signal. You might be saying, I want to, I want to build a legacy development system for families, right? But in the same breath, you've been listening to everything about divorces. You've been listening to why men ain't nothing and women ain't nothing and why marriages will never last. So you have a contradiction of frequencies that you've been inputting into your system. And sometimes we think it doesn't matter because you're like, oh, it's just a moment. And I actually like what I'm hearing. But it's a direct contradiction to your beliefs. It's a direct contradiction to what you said you want to build. And so then it causes emotional static. It causes from the environmental noise, from the input overloads, okay? And then when you get so much emotional static, it causes an unclear pathway. And so because of this, now you don't trust your intuition or what you say you want for yourself because you've been inputting contradictory frequencies. Catch that. Catch it. Yes, you can trust yourself. Yes, you can trust your intuition when it comes to building relationships and systems. But you need to make sure that you have a clear frequency input to trust a clear frequency output. So separate the signal from the noise when you feel the interruption. Number two, reduce unnecessary inputs. So once you say this is in accordance with what I said I want, when you're looking at the data, This is in accordance with what I said I want and who I said I am and what I'm going to do and what I'm going to manifest, what I'm creating in the world, right? This actually doesn't match it. Then you need to make a commitment to say, I am going to reduce my intake. Sometimes we have an addiction to signals and inputs that are not good for us. We have an addiction to listening to the gossip from our friends, right? We have an addiction to listening to the gossip from um, the whatever radio, TV, music you're listening to that directly contradicts who you say you are and what you want to do and what you say you protect and what you build. We have an addiction, unhealthy sexual addictions, but that's causing you to go against your own intuition on what you say you deserve. Unhealthy relationship addictions. And so everybody is not at a place where they can go cold turkey. Several years ago, over 20 years ago, I used to smoke cigarettes. Okay. And I remember people were like, well, you need to stop smoking. It's not good for you. I'm like, of course I know it's not good for me, but I'm not ready to stop. But I did start speaking at that moment that one day I will stop. And when I'm ready, I will stop for good. And when I was ready, I did stop for good. I stopped cold turkey and never went back, never had another urge. And it's hard to even imagine that version of myself now because I couldn't imagine putting no cigarettes on my lips these days. Okay. And so you got to look at whatever your addiction is and be honest with it. Because if you have an input overload, it's most likely coming from an addiction. And there are so many addictions that go beyond drugs. And so if you're not looking at your data, then you won't know your addictive behaviors, your addictive patterns that are causing interruptions in your flow, that's causing interruptions of what you're creating, that's causing interruptions in what you're giving birth to. Okay? So deep. I really want you to catch it. Okay? And then number 3, identify your aligned direction. So once you say separate the signal from the noise, then you reduce the unnecessary inputs, the addictive patterns and behaviors. Then you say, okay, now that I've reduced the addictive behaviors and addictive patterns and addictive inputs that are not conducive to what I'm building, what do I need to put more of into me? What do I need to put more of into my day? What inputs do I need to increase, right? So I can reduce the loss of signal. Okay. And so in in my master's AI, this is analyzing regression versus different classification behaviors. So regression is when you're looking at the data and you notice that this is what I said I wanted, but this is the actual result. Then you have to look at the loss in between what you said you wanted, your projection of what you thought was going to happen, and then you have to look at what actually happened, look at the loss between there, and then recalculate to do it again. Sometimes when we have what some people will call as failure, then you say, because of the interruptions, because of addictive behaviors, and because of addictive patterns, then you stop right there. But that's not where you stop. You use it as data to go back and recalculate the process and say, how can I reduce the loss now and my process until I actually have accurate outputs of what I said projected would happen to what is actually happening. Projecting success in my relationship to actually having a successful relationship. Projecting a successful system to actually having a successful system. The only way you're going to do that is through practice and analyzing your data. Okay. And then number 4 is define the meaningful output. Not just any output. What output is actually aligned with what you said you want to do with your mission, vision, purpose? You will be able to do that after you reduce the environmental noise, after you reduce the emotional static, after you reduce the input overload. After you do that, you'll see a clear pathway. And then that will reduce the nervous system fatigue. And then you can listen to your intuition more on what you need to do for yourself so that you can be there more for others, so that you can create systems that are actually authentic to what you believe in. And then you create a simple execution path from there, something that's repeatable from the data. From after you saying, okay, this was my projection, this was the actualization of what I said, this was the loss in between, how do I improve it? Then you improve it, and then you build a blueprint from that. And the blueprint is not the end all be all. That's just the next step. Okay. And then you protect your focus by building. That's your 6-step signal recovery process. From interruptions in your signal when it comes to intuition and self love. Okay. Specifically this week. If you would like this download that's on the screen, go ahead and do that. I thought I was going to walk you through my system that I did during Handle Truth, but I think I'm not going to do that. I think if you want to see the systems live, then follow me on my Handle Truth. So if you want to see the next system, check me out on Handle Truth. And I'm not going to be redundant in that sense. And you'll just see things as I build them. I'm going with the flow. This is actually intuitive self-love firsthand, because I've been traveling all day. So I want to be here for you, but I also need to be here for me too. And then I look at the data. So after today, I will look and see the success of this, how it went. I did start late. I did put out notifications late. And I want to ensure that what I'm doing is effective. And then I will keep building until this grows into something that we're all doing together. Okay, I'm actually going to end it here. So that's it for today. God bless you all. So if you want this specific gold map, put interrupt the overload or put gold map, and then I'll give you instructions on how to download it. Okay, that's it. God bless you all. Queen Mama Moon here. Until next time, no matter what you do or how you do it, be authentic. And I will see you for this week's Handle Truth, where I will walk through a system live build. Peace, y'all.